We vote on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Montana and I was an exchange student in Germany last year, but now I make these videos about Germany and the US and just kind of comparing the two cultures. I recently got a comment from Kurt FW, so thank you so much Kurt for this idea, and he was asking if I could kind of explain what Americans have to do in order to vote. The current year is 2020, in case anybody's watching this from the future, but it's currently 2020 and this is a presidential election year for the United States. We've normally got voting every year, so there's voting for like mayors of your city or voting for the congressmen, so like senators or House of Representatives. Those are just like another part of our government. But the big one is the presidential election, and it happens every 4 years. Most people in Germany, at least that I met, were very politically aware, so they definitely knew a lot about American politics, maybe more than most Americans know about American politics. But the current people up for election are Donald Trump, who is the incumbent, which just means that he is the current president running again. And then Joe Biden is the opponent or the other candidate running. I am 18 now, so that means that I do get to vote in this election. Kurt asked a few questions as to what that means, how someone is able to vote, and so on. So I'm just gonna answer those questions and kind of give you guys an overview on what it's like voting for the first time in the United States and how one does that. The first question that he asked was, what does someone need to do to be able to vote? And to do this, I just had to register online. You go to something like virginiavoting.org, but the voting registration is done through your state. I registered to vote and they eventually sent me a little mailing card that said like, this is your voter registration card. That voter registration is actually good for however long I'm still living in the state of Virginia. So if I do move cities or states and I need to like let the voter registration whole like website system know, then there could be some complications and I've got to re-register, but I did it once, so I should be good from now on. That registration form was super quick. It took like 5 minutes, I think. I had to provide stuff like my name, date of birth, ask for my social security number, and it asked for, I think it asked for my driver identification, so like on my driver ID card, because that proves that you live in the state and just like further proves your identity. So it asked for that. You did not have to pay to register to vote. That was another question, because I think in some areas of the world you do have to pay in order to register. Another question was, what do you actually do when you vote? So I'm gonna describe it as I know best, not in the circumstances that we are living in right now. Normally you go to the polls and there are all of these like dividers, like these plastic dividers, as if kids are taking tests, you know? But then the people who are allowed to vote, they go and they show their identification, they show that they're actually that person and they're here to vote, and then they're handed a paper ballot, and then you take that paper ballot and you go to the stand of like the little protection barrier, because I guess they want it to feel very private, like nobody's looking at who you're voting for. So then you go there, you have your ballot, and you mark it with a pen and you like fill it all in, and there's just like a bunch of bubbles that you can bubble in who you want to vote for. There's also something that I found interesting is like sometimes there are laws or changes to our written government that they will have on there for you to vote on. So like say they want to change the age of, I don't know, who knows, the age of smoking, they can sometimes put that, maybe that was a bad example, but no, that's a good example. So say they want to change the age of smoking to like 2 years younger, they can put that on the ballot as well, and then you can say yes or no on the ballot for that. So you fill out your whole form, then you walk with your form to this big like machine. It looks like almost a big printer or copier, and you slide it in and then counts it and reads it, and then afterwards you get a little sticker that says I voted. And I would always go with my mom when she needed to vote, and then they would give me a sticker too, even though I did not actually vote. And that is how the whole voting process works. But it's also very different in other states. That's just like in Virginia. So I think it's somewhat the same process, but I have heard that some states are starting to use electronic voting and so on, but at least in Virginia, it's just paper, and where we vote, that's how it is. They mentioned in this comment that they had to show their passport to prove that you are able to vote, but that's not a case here. I think at least for us, you have your identification card, and then they just ask you some questions. Sometimes they'll ask you like, where do you live, to make sure that you're not lying and to make sure that it's actually you on the card. On here, it says that Germans normally vote on Sundays because there's no schools in session. I really don't know what the historical background of this is, but in the United States, we normally vote on Tuesdays. Like, who chose Tuesdays? But the election day is the first Tuesday of November. Let me make sure that's right. We vote on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And the reason I'm saying it like that is because if the 1st of November is a Tuesday, that is not election day. So you've got to wait until there's a Monday in November, and then it's the Tuesday. This is very strange, but the reason being is something very historical, like some story about how they had voter registration on Tuesdays because people were previously traveling at least a day to vote to get to the place where they had to vote, and so they needed to give them a buffer time, and they couldn't use weekends because on Sundays people would be in church. So they made it Tuesday because then they have Monday to travel and then they can vote on Tuesday. Who knows if that's truly true? It sounds very American, so I would believe it, and that's what I have researched. But yeah, we vote on Tuesdays. It's notified as a civil holiday or like a government holiday in some states, but for the most part, schools are always closed on those days because the voting stations are oftentimes in schools. For us, mine is at the elementary school, but then I know I called that my last point, but my last point is that because of coronavirus, a lot of people are voting absentee, or in my German class we learned that it's called Briefwahl. So mein Briefwahl kommt bald, und I haven't done it yet, so I haven't filled out that form yet. But when you want to apply for an absentee ballot, which is what a lot of college students do, you just go back onto that website portal, you take 2 minutes to fill out this form and say where you want it shipped to, and then you basically get the little like envelope. I believe that somebody has to watch you fill it out and maybe sign their name too, but the one thing that they do to make sure that it's legit is your signature has to match the signature on your ID card, because then they know that you're the one who voted for the candidate and that you like signed it. I think it's really cool. I encourage everybody to vote. I think it definitely is a civic duty and it should be considered one, because it's not only a privilege to vote, but you can really impact your community by voting, and I think that's something that people should take responsibly. I look forward to voting for my first election for my first time. I will definitely document it on my Instagram, so guys, you guys can look out for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any other questions about voting in America, please let me know down below, or if you want to share any like interesting information about voting in Germany, I'd also love to hear about that. Hopefully you guys are staying safe and healthy, and yeah, bleib gesund and tschüss!